Have you ever looked at your wife and thought, she's still got it? Just like when she was 20? She might believe it too. I've seen that illusion linger in long-term marriages, like a soft fog that slowly dulls the light. Not because she stopped being beautiful, but because both of you forgot that desire is not something you keep by default. It's something you rebuild, again and again. Let me introduce myself. I'm a woman who once worked legally as an escort. I met hundreds of men, some broken, some bored, many confused. They didn't come to me for the obvious reason. They came because at home, something had gone silent. I'm not here to judge anyone, but I've seen what happens when a man spends years craving what he no longer receives, and when a woman forgets that affection is not a guarantee, it's a gift. So in this story, I'll share 6 truths, not to shame, but to remind. Because the women who understand these truths, they don't lose the men they love. If you feel this conversation might matter to you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with the word love below. I want to know who's truly still listening. He walked in wearing confidence like a second skin. Expensive watch, pressed shirt, the kind of man who once turned heads without trying. I know she still gets attention, he said. Men flirt with her all the time. Trainers, co-workers, even our friends. She's still magnetic. I nodded. But I've learned to hear what's not being said. What he meant was, if other men want her, why doesn't she seem to want me? This is the first truth most wives forget, but escorts never do. Being looked at is not the same as being loved. Flirtation isn't affection. A compliment isn't commitment. Many women, especially those who married young, hold on to the belief that because they still get glances, they still hold all the power. But those glances don't feed connection. They don't heal distance. In my world, men flirt constantly. That's not rare. What's rare is when a man stays, when he feels wanted, respected, chosen. That doesn't come from youth or beauty. It comes from attention with depth, presence with purpose. A glance might light a match, but it takes warmth over time to keep a fire. The women who understand this don't confuse passing desire with lasting devotion. And the men who are quietly waiting for their wives to choose them again, they're not shallow, they're starving. So, if you've been mistaking attention for affection, know this. A man who feels invisible at home will not stay curious forever. And being looked at is no substitute for being truly seen. He had been married for 23 years, still paid the bills, still came home on time, still remembered the small things. Her coffee, her mother's birthday, the way she hated silence at dinner. But when I asked him the last time she touched him like she meant it, he looked down and said, I don't remember. Here's something every successful escort learns early. If you don't show up with respect, warmth, presence, you won't get another chance. A client may forgive once, maybe twice, but he knows there are others. He doesn't owe you anything. In marriage, though, many women come to believe they're irreplaceable because he stays, because he's loyal, because he loves her. But here's the hard truth. When love meets zero consequence, it doesn't become freedom. It becomes entitlement. She stops showing up because nothing tells her she needs to. No distance, no resistance, no shift in energy. Not because she's cruel, but because comfort without accountability always drifts toward neglect. And the kindest men, the good husbands, are often the ones teaching this without realizing it. They endure. They wait. They say nothing. And in that silence, she learns the wrong lesson. I can give him less and he'll still stay. But the men who quietly lose themselves in long marriages don't do it out of weakness. They do it out of love. They think, maybe if I give more, she'll come back. But in reality, love without boundary becomes a slow erasure. She forgets how much he matters because nothing reminds her. And he forgets how much he's worth because no one shows him. There's no need for threats or ultimatums, but men who draw the line with calm, with dignity, with truth, are the ones who get seen again. Because when you stop accepting less, you start inviting more. And the woman who thought you'd never leave? She might just begin to notice what she's about to lose. He sat across from me, arms folded, eyes tired. My wife says she's not in the mood, he said. Not tonight, not this week, not for months now. He wasn't angry. He was fading. Let me tell you what every escort knows. We don't wait for the mood to strike. We prepare. We show up with presence, clarity, softness. Not because it's fake, but because real connection is something you build, not something you stumble into. In long-term relationships, many women believe that intimacy should be spontaneous, or it's not real. But that's a myth. Desire doesn't grow from nothing. It grows from intention. From shared glances, gentle touches, and choosing again and again to meet each other in the space between chaos and comfort. It doesn't mean forcing anything. It doesn't mean pretending. It means remembering. That warmth is something you co-create. When a woman stops choosing intimacy, she often believes it's because life got in the way. The kids, the work, the exhaustion, the grief. And those are real. But what she doesn't always see is that he is also grieving. Not a person, but a part of their bond slowly disappearing. Intimacy is not about frequency. It's about showing up with something to give, not just something to get. When I worked, I didn't bring a script. I brought attention. I brought presence. And many men told me, "You make me feel like I matter." Not because I was exceptional, but because I was awake to them. That's the difference. Many wives forget. He doesn't need fireworks. He just wants to feel chosen again. And no, intimacy won't fix every problem. But the absence of it will quietly tell him, "You don't move me anymore." And if he starts to believe that, you won't lose his loyalty. You'll lose his soul. He was one of the kindest men I had ever met. Always polite, always respectful, always trying. But when I asked him how long it had been since his wife touched him with tenderness, he paused and couldn't remember. "I guess we just drifted," he said. But it wasn't a drift. It was a pattern. This is what most wives don't realize, and what every successful escort lives by. People respond to what you tolerate, not what you wish for, not what you hope they'll notice, what you silently allow. In marriage, the same man who once drew boundaries with the world suddenly becomes someone who absorbs it all. Her coldness, her disinterest, her absence. Not because he enjoys suffering, but because he believes that love means staying no matter what. But here's the thing. If you show up every day, doing the chores, paying the bills, being dependable while getting nothing in return, you're not being noble. You're being erased. Because she is learning moment by moment that she can withdraw her warmth and still keep you. No consequences. No shift. No need to change. And again, not because she's cruel, but because in the absence of accountability, we all become complacent. The men I met often weren't looking for perfection. They were looking for recognition, to be touched with intention, to be seen not just as a provider, but as a man, with longings, with limits, with a soul. When they told me their stories, I didn't think, "How could she?" I thought, "Why didn't you stop her sooner?" Not with anger, but with clarity. You don't need to punish her. You just need to remember your worth. Because when you keep showing up with open hands and get nothing back, eventually she believes that nothing is required of her. And you believe that nothing more is possible. But something is. And it starts with you. Not being louder, just being firmer. Not being cruel, just being awake. Because the most dangerous silence in a marriage isn't the one between two people. It's the one inside a man who no longer believes he deserves more. He told me their life was full soccer games, school pickups, joint bank accounts, dinners with friends. But something's missing, he said. She's kind, she's reliable, but I don't feel like her man anymore. I feel like her roommate. I knew exactly what he meant. Because this is what so many long-term couples do without realizing. They trade erotic energy for efficiency, desire for duty, passion for planning, Wives often don't notice when the shift happens. They believe that as long as the home runs smoothly, the marriage is fine. But marriage is not a schedule. It's not a checklist. It's not the family calendar pinned to the fridge. It's built on something far more fragile and far more alive. Erotic connection. Emotional risk. The feeling that you're still choosing each other, not just managing each other. When I walked into a room as an escort, I didn't bring logistics. I brought attention. I brought awareness. I wasn't reading from a script. I was reading the room, the person in front of me, the unspoken hunger behind their practiced smile. That presence, that energy is not about sex. It's about remembering someone as desirable, not just dependable. Many wives don't mean to shut that door, but over time they fill the space where intimacy once lived with everything else. Children, jobs, aging parents, grocery lists, charity work. And he stays because he loves her. But inside, he's starving. Not just for sex, but for spark. For recognition. For the look in her eyes that says, I see you as a man, not a task. Desire does not survive on routine. It survives on wonder. And when that wonder disappears, no amount of teamwork can replace the feeling of being wanted. Because at the end of the day, a family can survive without sex, but a marriage can't. It's the first lesson I learned in my line of work, and the one most wives never imagined could apply to them. You are not irreplaceable just because he married you. You are remembered for how you show up, not how long you've been there. When I worked, I knew this in my bones. There were always other women, younger, cheaper, more available. But what kept good men coming back wasn't novelty. It was how I made them feel in my presence. Seen, respected, desired. Many wives believe their place is permanent, that the wedding ring sealed something timeless. But even diamonds lose their brilliance if never touched. Men don't leave marriages because they're bored. They leave because they're invisible. They walk through the same door every night, but no one lights up. No one notices the weight they carry. No one reaches for them like they're still wanted. And slowly, the man who once burned with devotion starts to flicker. Not out of spite, but out of absence. I've met men who never thought they'd cross a line. Men of faith. Men of honor. But after years of living untouched, unseen, unfelt, they cracked. Not for sex, but for softness. And when they finally looked into someone's eyes and saw admiration instead of obligation, they remembered who they were. Not because the other woman was better, but because she simply looked at him like he mattered. That is the truth most wives forget. He doesn't need perfect. He needs present. He doesn't need fireworks. He needs warmth. And if you stop giving that, don't be surprised when someone else does. Not because she stole him, but because you let him slip through your silence. Being irreplaceable is not about the past. It's about today and how you show up now, not who you used to be. He once told me, "You smiled like you meant it." It was such a small thing, a moment, a gesture. But to him, it was everything. Most of the men I met weren't looking for fantasy. They weren't chasing thrill. They were searching for presence. The feeling that, for just a moment, someone was truly there with them. Not multitasking, not managing, not enduring. Just there, eyes meeting eyes, breath syncing with breath, a pause in the noise of the world. That's what stays with a man long after the moment has passed. Not the lingerie, not the candlelight, but the quiet miracle of being acknowledged. Many wives forget this. They believe connection must be grand, planned, or intense. But it isn't. It's in the way you put down your phone when he speaks. It's in how you greet him after a long day, not out of habit, but out of desire. Presence says, "You matter." Presence whispers, "I still see you." I've seen men melt, literally exhale in my company, not because I did anything extraordinary, but because I showed up fully. No distractions, no resentment, no checklist. Just space for him to exist without having to prove anything. That is what men remember. And it's what they crave. Not performance, but presence. If you've been with someone for years, it's easy to forget that the most radical thing you can offer is your full attention. But trust me, when you do, something ancient wakes up in him. He remembers who he is, and more importantly, he remembers why he chose you. Because when all the noise fades, what he truly longs for isn't to be entertained, it's to be felt. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to dye your hair, learn new tricks, or pretend to be 20 again. But you do need to remember this. Connection is not something you had. It's something you create. Again, and again, and again. Men don't stop loving easily. They stop reaching when reaching feels pointless. They stop speaking when silence becomes the safer option. They don't want someone perfect. They want someone present, a partner, not a ghost in the kitchen. If your marriage has grown quiet, don't wait for him to explode. Most men don't. They withdraw slowly, silently, until one day the distance is so wide you don't even know how it began. But here's the truth no one tells you. You can be the wake-up call. Not with anger, not with guilt, but with clarity, softness, and courage. Ask him what he misses. Touch him like you still mean it. Look at him, not through him. Be the one who chooses again, not out of habit, but out of want. Because when a man feels chosen, he softens. He listens. He rises. And yes, maybe the damage feels deep. Maybe you've both let things slide. But that doesn't mean it's over. It means it's time to return. To effort, to presence, to truth. You don't need grand gestures. You just need to show up genuinely, willingly, and regularly. That's how trust is rebuilt. That's how desire returns. That's how love grows up. If this story made you pause, if something in you stirred even just a little, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave the word love in the comments below. Because maybe what you're longing to hear is exactly what someone else has been longing to say.